Sometimes, the most profound transformation doesn't arrive like a tidal wave, it comes silently, like the slow drip of water that, over time, carves through stone. The 1% better everyday principle is not about grand revolutions or overnight miracles. It is a philosophy rooted in the gentle power of consistency, the quiet courage of choosing progress over perfection, and the belief that even the smallest effort, when repeated daily, has the potential to rewrite the course of our lives. At its heart, this book teaches us that we often overestimate what we can achieve in a day, yet tragically underestimate what we can accomplish in a year, or a lifetime, through daily, incremental improvement. The principle is disarmingly simple: get just 1% better every day. That's it, but within this simplicity lies a quiet wisdom that, when embraced, touches every area of our existence, our work, our relationships, our self-worth, and our inner peace. Think of a man named Daniel, drifting through life, always overwhelmed by the sheer scale of his dreams. He wanted to lose weight, start a business, become a better father, and maybe, one day, write a book. But each time he looked at the distance between where he stood and where he wanted to be, he felt paralyzed. So he did what many of us do: he waited for the perfect time, the right energy, the better opportunity. That day never came. Then, one morning, Daniel stumbled upon this principle: just get 1% better today. He didn't have to run a marathon, just take a 10-minute walk. He didn't need to write a novel, just one paragraph. He didn't need to become a new father overnight, just be more present for 15 minutes before bed. And slowly, like the sun rising behind a mountain, things began to shift. His life didn't explode with change, it blossomed with quiet, resilient progress. The author of this book guides us through this principle not merely as a strategy but as a mindset, a lifestyle. There is a certain humility in accepting that we won't leap forward every day. There will be setbacks, there will be plateaus, but the goal isn't perfection, it's persistence. The 1% principle teaches us to befriend the process, not obsess over the destination. One of the most powerful insights in the book is the idea that habits shape identity, and identity, in turn, fuels habits. Each time you make a 1% improvement, you are casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. A writer who writes one sentence a day is still a writer. A healthy person who chooses an apple over chips once is still aligning with health. The cumulative impact of these small votes, over weeks, months, and years, is staggering. It's how people go from struggling in silence to living with intention and clarity. The book shares real-life stories that gently remind us of our shared humanity. A woman who, after years of fighting depression, simply committed to stepping outside her house for 5 minutes each morning. At first, it was agony, but that tiny act cracked open the door to a new way of being. Eventually, those 5 minutes became walks, which became jogs, which led to a community running group, which led to friendships, laughter, purpose. It wasn't therapy alone or a grand realization, it was the steady 1% improvement that brought her back to life. Another key theme is the role of mindset. The book emphasizes the power of seeing effort not as a burden but as a gift. Progress is not always visible in the short term, and that's where many people give up. We're conditioned to want quick results, instant weight loss, overnight success, immediate recognition. But true growth is often invisible. Like the roots of a tree spreading underground before it ever bears fruit, our small efforts build strength and structure beneath the surface. The 1% principle invites us to detach from outcomes and instead fall in love with the process. It reframes failure not as the end but as a necessary part of growth. Missing a day doesn't break the system, it's part of being human. What matters is returning to the path with grace. This is not a rigid blueprint but a flexible rhythm, a compassionate invitation to keep showing up. And perhaps most beautifully, the book touches on the emotional transformation that occurs when we live this way. When you get 1% better every day, you begin to trust yourself again. You no longer need to chase motivation, it rises from within as a byproduct of consistent action. Self-respect grows. Confidence is no longer tied to external validation but to the quiet knowledge that you are showing up for yourself. Each act, however small, becomes a whisper that says, "You matter. Your life is worthy of care." The book doesn't pretend this journey is easy. There are chapters that speak with tenderness about the weight of past failures, the shame that can haunt us, the fear of never being enough. But through each story, each insight, there is a gentle reassurance: you don't have to be extraordinary to begin. You just have to begin. There is a particularly moving section about a man named Reuben, who had lost everything in a financial collapse: his home, his marriage, his dignity. For months he lay in bed, numbed by hopelessness. Then, one day, he made a 1% change. He got out of bed and shaved. That was it. The next day, he made his bed. The next week, he applied for a part-time job. And 2 years later, he had rebuilt not just a career, but his sense of self-worth. His story reminds us that it is never too late to begin again. And that rebuilding does not happen in lightning bolts, it happens in small, deliberate sparks of action. The principle also carries deep spiritual undertones. To get 1% better every day is, in essence, to surrender to time, to trust that the divine or the universe, or simply life itself, honors consistency. There is beauty in that surrender. There is grace in the effort. Each day becomes a prayer in motion, a meditation on possibility. On a practical level, the book outlines techniques for integrating this principle into daily life. It recommends starting with clarity. Choose one area of life where improvement would create ripple effects: your health, your relationships, your mindset, your finances. Then, define what 1% better looks like in that context. It could be a 5-minute journaling practice, drinking more water, reading 2 pages of a book, offering gratitude to a loved one. The magic isn't in the action itself, it's in the repetition. There's also a discussion about environmental design, setting up your surroundings to support your goals. If you want to read more, keep a book next to your bed. If you want to eat better, make healthy food more accessible. These small adjustments reduce friction, making it easier to maintain momentum. The author encourages us to become architects of our environment, not just victims of our habits. But above all, the core message is one of hope: quiet, persistent, believable hope. You don't need to change everything. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to honor the next small step, and then another, and then another. Like drops of water that wear away stone, your efforts will accumulate. Not always in ways you can see day to day, but undeniably over time. As the book gently concludes, it reminds us that transformation is less about doing more and more about doing what matters, again and again. Progress is not a finish line you cross but a path you walk, one choice at a time. And in choosing to get 1% better every day, we're not just changing our habits, we're healing our relationship with effort, time, and self-worth. So let this be a quiet encouragement to you. You don't need a new year, a new job, or a lightning bolt of inspiration to start over. You just need today. One moment of intention, one step forward. Let that be enough. Because over time, those tiny steps will carry you further than you ever imagined, and one day, you'll look back and realize you have become everything you once hoped to be, not through force or frenzy, but through quiet, steady devotion to your own becoming.